This reminds me of a joke. This guy comes into a bar, walks up to the bartender. He says, "Bartender, I got me a bet for you. I'm gonna bet you $300 that I can piss into that glass over there and not spill a single solitary drop." The bartender looks at this glass, and then we're talking about like this glass is like a good 10 feet away. He says, "No, wait, let me get this straight. You're trying to tell me you're gonna bet me $300 that you can piss standing over here, way over there, into that glass and not spill a single drop?" The customer looks at him and says, "That's right." Bartender says, "Young man, you got a bet." The guy goes, "Okay, here we go, here we go." Pulls out his thing. He's looking at the glass, man. He's thinking about the glass. He's thinking about the glass. He's glass. He's thinking about the glass. Glass. Thinking about his dick. Dick glass. Dick glass. Dick glass. Be the glass. Dick glass. Dick glass. Dick glass. And then he lets it rip. And he's pissing all over the place, man. He's pissing on the bar. He's pissing on the stools, on the floor, on the phone, on the bartender. He's pissing everywhere except the fucking glass, right? Okay. So, bartender, he's laughing his fucking ass off. He's $300 richer. He's like, ha 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 ha, just dripping off his face. Ha ha ha. This says, "You fucking idiot, man. You got it in everything except the glass. You owe me $300, punta." Guy goes, "Excuse me, just one second." Goes in the back of the bar. In the back, there's a couple guys playing pool. He walks over to them. Comes back to the bar, goes, "Here you go, Mr. Bartender, 3." And the bartender's like, "What the fuck are you so happy about? You just lost $300, idiot." The guy says, "Well, see those guys over there? I just bet them $500 a piece that I could piss on your bar, piss on your floor, piss on your phone, and piss on you. And not only would you not be mad about it, you'd be happy." That's some funny shit, huh? You be happy about it.
From parody to romantic, from sketch to satire, and just well-written funny films, there isn't a shortage, and even if most of it is awful, some of it is pretty damn good. This is the Last Reviewer podcast, and if you haven't gathered, we're talking about those funny films people like to enjoy in their spare time. I'm Eamon.
I'm Chris.
Let's get on with the show. But first, the news. We've got plenty of news this week.
Yeah, we haven't updated for like a week or two.
No.
So
we got a Pacific Rim trailer. It sucks. The Justice League trailer.
Before we move on from Pacific Rim, what else has happened with Pacific Rim, Eamon?
But you know how everything gets a cinematic universe these days?
Yeah.
If this film, Pacific Rim Uprising, if that's successful, there's going to be another cinematic universe on the block.
Wonderful.
It's one of those movies that doesn't deserve a sequel.
No, it doesn't deserve anything beyond...
Like, the first one was a fun time, but...
Yeah.
There's no room for a sequel. It's dead, as far as I'm concerned. This new film is a waste of time.
Yeah, and seeing John Boyega in everything is just like, why?
I feel good for the guy.
Of an actor.
Like, he's gone from doing Attack the Block, which is pretty his best work, to, Star Wars and Pacific Rim, which is quite a leap.
But why was he in The Circle? Like, he's not that
Yeah, I think
great.
it's just because he was in Star Wars.
Yeah.
And people like, his name sells. Same reason Daisy Ridley's in Murder in the Orient Express.
Yeah.
She was in Star Wars, and they're like, hey, people liked her in Star Wars, let's put her in everything.
Yeah, and I feel that just
He's
ruins
actually...
things
John
for him.
Boyega is really good as a dramatic actor.
Okay.
He did a movie, I think, earlier this year called Imperial Dreams, which is about him and his son surviving in, like, Los Angeles or whatever. It's about gang violence and stuff.
Wow, he just can't get away from the Imperials.
It's true. That's what I thought. And later on this year, he's in Detroit, the film called Detroit, which is about race riots in, I think, the 50s or 60s. Again, he's playing a serious role. I think he's a cop, a black cop, during the height of racism the height of modern racism in America. But yeah, that looks pretty good. So it's like
The 70s?
Yeah, I think so. It's around about that time. But yeah, when he's in like genre films, he's clearly there just to have fun, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But he's actually pretty good as a dramatic actor. So
Yeah, I have nothing against him as a person. Just look, he was in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Let's put him in everything.
yeah. But I'm more confused by that film is why Clint Eastwood's son is in it. Like he was in Suicide Squad for a bit.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway,
yeah.
let's move on.
Yeah. There's been rumour for some time now of a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Jason Statham spin-off of the Fast and Furious franchise. It is now officially confirmed with a 29 release date planned.
29?
2019 date. 2019 release date planned. Quite excited for that movie. I don't care about the Fast and Furious at all, but the only part I remember from any of them was their fight in 8?
Yeah, in the
Yes.
last one, Fate of the
Fate.
Furious, which if the entire movie is like that jail fight, then I'm
Well, I imagine they're
pumped.
going to be on a team rather than enemies. But
Yeah,
I
but
hope
the-
it's
the-
more of a we're forced to be together, so we still kind of hate each other rather than. Also, I hope it's just one. I don't want them to try and turn it into a franchise, or lo and behold, the Fast and Furious cinematic universe.
But yeah, the choreography of that scene is what I was referring to because it was amazing.
It was pretty good. Of course, Gambit. That was a movie that's kind of been floating around development hell for a little while.
10
but
years maybe.
when did Wolverine Origins come out?
I don't know, but I've been hearing.
Yeah,
that Tatum-
2009 was that movie, and Gambit was set up not long after that. So yeah,
I've been hearing that Channing Tatum is Gambit for something like 10 years.
But yeah, apparently he's still attached to be Gambit, and now Gorbavinsky is directing. I only know him from 3 Pirates of the Caribbean's films. One of them was watchable, so not a great track record.
Okay.
Not that anybody really cares about Gambit anymore. Like when it was announced years and years ago, it's like, oh, that could be interesting, but
No, well, Marvel's focused far less on X-Men comics. X-Men movies don't exist
it's
anymore.
funny how Marvel's petty like that. What do you mean X-Men movies don't exist anymore?
They're not making anymore.
Yeah, they are.
When?
New
What?
Mutants comes out next year.
Yeah, but that's New Mutants, not X-Men.
No, they're still making mainline X-Men films using the kids from Apocalypse.
Oh, well, I don't care about that. But anyway, the what I heard when Apocalypse was released is that that's the end of that storyline.
No.
And I was kind of hoping it was.
I believe they're picking up Dark Phoenix in a couple years' time.
But yeah, my point is that it's not in the public consciousness at the moment. So, yeah, good luck with.
Good luck with Gambit. Jared Leto is playing Hugh Hefner in a biopic. That was very quick.
Yeah, look, I don't care about Jared. I don't care much about Hugh Hefner.
No.
I don't think he deserves the hate, but let's not get political here.
I don't think he deserves a biopic.
No.
How interesting can it be?
I mean, the man did live in the mansion that every straight man wants to live in, but
To make a movie about it?
I mean, they've already got the House Bunny and a bunch of Playboy documentaries. Anyway.
In more recent news, this news more interesting for me. John Krasinski, who you may know from The Office US, and he was in Michael Bay's 13 Hours. He is picking up the character of Jack Ryan, a character created by Tom Clancy. A bunch of books about him. The character's been played before by Chris Pine, Harrison Ford, Ben Affleck, and one of the Baldwins.
In what?
Various movies. Some of Our Fears, The Hunt for Red October, I think, was one. There's various films
Okay, so they're
being made
not
about this
like
character.
a series. They're just a bunch of movies.
I think there's 4 movies which I think are supposed to be a series, and then there was a new one a couple years ago with Chris Pine, which was like an origin story. But yeah, this TV show.
Chris Pine cannot get away from origin stories.
No, you can't.
Star Trek, Wonder Woman.
Yep.
Wow.
But yeah, so they're picking up this TV show because the whole idea is he's not a CIA agent; he's just an analyst.
Yeah.
And he manages to get pulled into these situations. Show looks pretty good. I like the character. I like John Krasinski. I think it could be interesting.
I feel like we had another trailer.
We have 2 other trailers. I think I already mentioned the Justice League trailer. If I didn't, it's not really worth it.
Yeah.
Superman is in it, but it's all a dream. Of course, we have Star Wars, the big trailer. It's probably been trending since it released. Not a whole lot to go on. I will say it looks as nice as The Force Awakens, like visually.
Oh yeah, the Force Awakens, like the action was fun and the visuals were decent. But I couldn't care less for this new.
As
Star
far
Wars
as like,
trilogy.
I'll go see it. It's Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
There was some interesting things in it, but I feel like they're trying to play too many cards close to their chest. And the only really way, like, people are gonna. I feel like they're doing this intentionally because they know people are gonna go see it. They know it's gonna make like $2 billion or whatever.
Yeah.
But I would like them to say, hey, this is a general idea of what's happening in this film, rather than us going to see it and it's just Empire Strikes Back, the next one.
Yeah, or just follow up on everything that happened in Force Awakens without anything new, which I'm really worried it will be. But
Yeah.
again, I don't care.
And finally, we have the announcement of Creed 2. Creed was the boxing spin-off of Rocky a couple years
Michael
ago.
B. Jordan.
Yep. Which is being directed by Sylvester Stallone, who I believe directed at least one Rambo and one Rocky film. Plus, I think the first Expendables. So he's not a terrible director. Set to start shooting in 2018. Maybe this is the start of yet another cinematic universe.
Well, I didn't see it. I've actually never seen a Rocky film.
I've sat through all of them.
Oh.
Creed was the only one that I liked.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because that was the first one I watched was Creed, and I think it's a little like the first Rocky film is just like your standard underdog story, and after that they just get more and more ridiculous, and like, you know, he fights. There's like the Cold War one where he fights Ivan Drago, played by the big Swedish guy from the Expendables. I don't remember his name. But like, you know, there's like US flags everywhere, and there's a talking robot, and it's, yeah, they lose that whole underdog story pretty quickly. But Creed kind of comes back to that, having Sylvester Stallone as like a coach for him, essentially. It's quite a good story, quite a good movie. But it's not a funny movie, and we're here to talk about funny movies.
Or at least comedy movies as a genre.
As a genre.
So, you know, you can't really touch on comedy movies without starting. Let's start with the worst, save the best for till last.
Yeah.
In a sense, the essentials of comedy in 2017, or at least for the last 17 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of these movies we got down here have been essentials of comedy for the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah, but I mean, your Rogan, Sandler, Franco, Ferrell.
Yeah.
Even Jim Carrey, who was more 90s.
I think Jim Carrey is done now. I think he retired.
I think he's gone crazy.
Yeah, I've just seen these pictures of him with like an enormous beard that looks like one of those bee beards.
Well, he's been telling people recently that Jim Carrey doesn't exist. It's all in his head. He's just a person who chooses who he is. So yeah, he's lost it.
Fair enough.
But in the 90s, he did
Yeah.
some pretty interesting stuff.
Interesting is the correct word. The Mask was an interesting film.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to talk much about The Mask.
The Riddler?
It's definitely a kid's movie. That is definitely a kid's movie as well. But I didn't mind the concepts of Liar Liar and then the same thing again for Yes Men.
Yeah, I enjoyed The Truman Show.
Yeah,
because that was less about him trying to be weird.
Well, it wasn't even comedy, really.
But like the whole concept of that, I thought that was a pretty solid movie.
So yeah, he really started this trend of this really weird comedy that has kind of morphed over the years, mostly because of weed. But
yeah, and which kind of brings in the whole Seth Rogen, James Franco comedy, the weed comedy, none of which are good.
So it really started with, we were talking about this before, it really started with Steve Carell's The 40-Year-Old Virgin, which had Seth Rogen in his first real major cinematic role.
Yeah.
You know, he'd done other stuff, but not as the Seth Rogen we know and hate today.
Yes, know and hate is an apt description.
Yes. But have you seen any good Seth Rogen films?
No. Just going to cut to the chase. I have never seen a film starring Seth Rogen in a leading role that I've enjoyed.
Okay. Well, I think there's a couple. I can't really think of any, but been a minor role in some serious films that are alright.
I mean, 50-50. I
50-50.
think it's him and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I forget why it's called 50-50, but Joseph Gordon-Levitt has cancer or something. That was alright.
Okay. But yeah, Sausage Party was definitely
Oh yeah, he was in that, wasn't
an amusing movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd call it outright funny, but
he? No.
it was...
It had some funny moments. I think the whole Saving Private Ryan parody with food was quite funny.
Yeah. The Interview had some fairly funny moments. That's a bit old now and forgotten, but Eminem coming out as gay was pretty
that was quite
great.
funny. Of course, you've got your Will Ferrell.
Yeah. Anchorman was not terrible.
No, it wasn't awful.
It had some interesting ideas.
I wouldn't go out of my way to watch a film starring Will Ferrell. I watched that one with him and the other guys. I think it's him and Mark Wahlberg. And there's a part in that where, you know, Sam Jackson and The Rock are like super cops, and I wish I was watching Super Cops with Sam Jackson and The Rock.
The other guys, I don't remember it, but I remember thinking as a younger person that it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
So that, you know, my views of Will Ferrell have always been kind of...
I mean, one of the
great.
more popular ones who's kind of, I wouldn't say faded into obscurity, but he's kind of lost his charm these days is
Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller.
Now, Zoolander, I really enjoy Zoolander.
I do not enjoy Zoolander.
I like the can't turn left idea.
Yeah. See, that's kind of my whole deal with him. He's just like, it gets attached to this one weird idea, at least for his character, and then he just kind of rolls with it and yeah.
But yeah, the crazy characters in that, I just think it's funny to witness passing by more than anything else.
Meet the Parents is him early, I think that was 2000, with Robert De Niro, who, you know, kind of stomps all over everybody in that movie. And there's a brilliant scene in which, you know, he plays a character called Gaylord, which is not a joke. Like, that's what his parents named him. The movie thought that was funny. I didn't. I thought that was just dumb.
No, I don't think anyone thought it was funny outside the movie.
But yeah, he's explaining how he milked a cat, and Robert De Niro says, "Oh, how did you do that?" And he says, "You can milk anything with nipples." And Robert De Niro looks him dead in the eye and says, because he goes by the name Greg, because naturally he doesn't want to be called Gaylord. He goes, "I have nipples, Greg. Can you milk me?" Robert De Niro saying that. Brilliant.
Now I just want to see Robert De Niro getting milked.
I do not. They made a sequel to that movie.
Yeah.
Yep, the less said about that, the better. And Tropic Thunder, another film starring Ben Stiller, in which he is the least funny part of it.
Robert Downey Jr. in blackface.
Yeah, which is brilliant. But there's a scene in which Ben Stiller turns around because the rest of the crew is like messing about or whatever, and he's like, "You people," and you know Robert Downey Jr. is kind of like method acting, so he is a black man as far as he can. "What do you mean, you people?" And then the actual black guy in the group is, "What do you mean, you people?" So there's this whole thing going on about how Robert Downey Jr. thinks he's black, but he's not black, and the actual black guy's like, "You can't." Like, there's this point where like, "I gotta get me some cornbread," and the black guy's like, "You really think we all talk like that?" It's quite funny.
Fair enough. And I feel like we can't move on without at least mentioning his name, Adam Sandler.
We've mentioned it. That's enough for me.
I feel like he did the same thing as Jim Carrey, but less well. He started with some interesting movies, interesting concepts, and then moved on to grown-ups.
Slowly divulged into just being weird on screen.
Yeah, it's like he's got this group of friends, Rob Schneider, Kevin James, and we're all expected to be in on these in-jokes and just find the fact that they're hanging out funny.
Yeah, they're not.
That's actually the plot of Grown Ups. Looking at IMDb. Look, Grown Ups had some funny lines, but as a movie it doesn't work.
I've not seen an Adam Sandler movie since Click.
Now, I like the idea of Click. I wish
like the
anyone
idea.
else had done Click.
Anybody else. I would have preferred Rob Schneider to do that.
Oh, calm
Because
down.
I don't hate Rob Schneider. I think he made a TV series about him being remembered for being unfunny,
Yeah, I think I remember
which was
hearing
quite
about that.
which was quite funny. And I think it's because he knows he's not funny, and he knows he's been in loads of terrible movies. So he's like, I'll just roll with it.
Mm.
I feel like sometimes you just have to be a little more self-aware than a lot of these people are. But enough about awful people in awful comedies. Let's talk about some good ones.
Yeah, well, if we're sticking with the modern era, we've got franchises like The Hangover and Jump Street.
I said good ones.
Well, both of these, Jump Street started out alright.
Yeah, the first one was pretty funny.
The second one had a lot of funny moments, but then, you know, the bit at the end when they were going through all the future sequels was a bit too real.
Was that the first one? Because remember, they did that in the first film, and I thought that was the funniest part of the movie.
I thought that was the second one.
No, they do it in the first one.
Okay.
They might do it again in the second one, but yeah, I think they get to like number 50 or something, and they're just more and more outlandish. But then the second one did come along, and it was kind of like, oh, kind of missed the joke of your own movie.
A bit too real.
The Hangover I tried to watch. Zach Galifianakis is not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've watched The Hangover, and for good reason.
I mean, if you want to talk funny series, the Cornetto trilogy.
Oh yeah, Edgar Wright's, all of Edgar Wright's movies, really. Even though you're not a fan of Scott Pilgrim.
I'm not a fan of Scott Pilgrim. Feel free to crucify me. I've been crucified before.
I don't think I'm going to crucify you over that.
No, I hate that movie. I cannot stand it.
Okay, well, calm down.
Makes me sick. Probably because Michael Cera's in it, whom I hate.
Fair enough.
Another funny one is not a more recent one from the 90s, I think. Office Space. Have you seen that?
I have.
It's quite a funny movie.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Mostly just because of that guy with the stapler. He's like, they took my stapler, I'm going to burn this building down. And then he does. It's a very stupid movie, but
My
quite
main
good.
memory of that is when they've taken the printer out and they're just
beating it.
And it's such an office worker thing to do.
It's so cathartic. Like, you know, you always got that piece of technology that doesn't work and you just want to smash it.
Usually a printer. And if we're going backwards, let's keep up that trend.
Yeah.
We've missed one. In Bruges, you love that
In
one.
Bruges, I do enjoy that film. Quite a dark comedy, but funny all the same. There's another film coming out, I think, this year or next year by the same director. It's 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which is about a mother's daughter gets killed and she's trying to convince the police to look into it, and that looks quite funny.
It does. The main
Frances
star of,
McDormand.
Yeah, I've never seen her in anything.
She's in Fargo. That's another dark comedy.
Okay, but
Or in Transformers 3.
She seems hilarious. And the trailer, I recommend you go watch it because it's brilliant.
Quite a funny trailer.
But yes, why do you love In Bruges? Because I couldn't finish it.
You couldn't?
No.
I just like the fact that it's got so many, like, it's, how best to describe it? It's kind of like the film makes fun of anything and everything that most films won't try to make fun of, at least in a film setting that's semi-serious. So, like, where did you get up to?
I can't remember. It's been a while.
But, like, there's a scene where Colin Farrell is all sad and he's about to commit suicide as Brendan Fraser is coming up to kill him, and he's pointing the gun at him, and Colin Farrell pulls out the gun and puts it to his head, and Brendan Gleeson, who is like his friend, he doesn't really want to kill him. He's like, what are you doing? Don't kill yourself, even though he's just about to kill him. And it's like super dark, but they try to make light and, you know, make comedy out of what is things that aren't usually touched on.
Yeah.
The whole point of the film is Colin Farrell accidentally killed a child. So they've gone to Bruges to escape all the law stuff. And the villain of the piece, Harry, played by Ray Fiennes, comes in towards the end to finish the job himself because he's like, he should have just killed himself. It's a matter of honor, and he accidentally shoots a midget, and he thinks that the midget is a little boy, and he's like, oh, it's a matter of honor. And Colin Farrell is like, it's just a midget, and then he kills himself.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not like a laugh out loud, ha ha ha, he's killed a midget, now he's going to commit suicide. But it's kind of like circumstantial comedy.
Fair enough. I think because I was watching, like at the start, it's mostly Colin Farrell brooding over being in Bruges, and then some fat people are there.
That's brilliant when they're chasing him around the bench.
It is, but it was just a bit weird for me. I don't think I was
it is a strange movie.
ready for it.
It is a strange movie. Like people will say it's really funny, and if you go in expecting a comedy, like that's just an out and out comedy, it's gonna be weird.
Yeah.
It's funny film, but you've just got to watch it like it's a drama.
Fair enough.
And then you'll actually laugh at it. So if you didn't finish it, you won't have heard one of the funniest parts, which is they're trying to get into the tower a couple of days later, and the guard won't let them in because some fat American had a heart attack halfway up, which is like a callback to that earlier scene where he says you won't make it halfway.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's lots of little things like that. They're like, it's a fairy tale town. It's like, I could have grown up on a farm in Dublin and I wouldn't have found this fairy tale farm. Oh no, what did he say? He says like something about growing. If he grew up on a farm in Dublin and he was retarded as a child, he might like Bruges, but he didn't, so he doesn't.
Fair
which
enough.
is yeah.
Well, I understand it because I'm from Bundaberg.
Yeah, it's a movie that just doesn't care. Like it doesn't care about being politically correct or so it just kind of rolls with it.
Righto. Another one you like that I actually did really enjoy.
Yeah.
Hunt for the Wilder People.
Hunt for the Wilder People. Skug's Life.
Yeah, I was gonna say Skug.
It's so good.
It's clearly very modern because the kid is. It's mostly a movie and this, especially in the later part of the movie, it's mostly a movie about a kid being a millennial and a grandfather who won't take it.
Yeah, or doesn't understand it.
Yeah.
And like the kid doesn't understand the world. Like, there's the wanted post. It's like, they say you're Caucasian. You're clearly white.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the kind of comedy that I like more. It's more like jokes within the story.
Yeah, if you've ever seen a New Zealand comedy, you know what to expect. Just bear with it because it gets more normal.
I know a lot of people didn't enjoy it because they didn't get a lot of the jokes. I feel like if you don't know about New Zealand or anything, a lot of them, it's like that other one, Black Sheep, which is, sheep in New Zealand is kind of a joke. And lots of people are like, this is just a horror movie with sheep. Like, I don't get it, but people from Australia and New Zealand, like, it's brilliant. It's a horror movie with sheep.
But even Hunt for the Wilder People was better than Black Sheep.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Books.
Definitely.
Because it actually has some normalness to it. Normalcy.
And it's at the same time, even if it wasn't trying to be a comedy, it would still be a good movie, just on its own.
Yeah, it's a beautiful movie as well. But yeah, it's very funny after the first.
Yeah, well, because the start is kind of like depressing.
Yeah.
Like, here you are, but the funeral.
I think 15 minutes in or
There's two
something.
doors, and what's behind the door? It's a very funny film.
It takes a while, but yeah, give it a crack. Some of my favourites.
Yeah.
I grew up watching some of the older ones that were far older than, the jokes were far. I was far too young to understand a lot of jokes in these. So Airplane, which is mostly puns, but there's a lot of very adult humour in that.
Have you ever seen a grown man naked?
Yeah, one of my favourite
She said
parts.
yes. Have you ever been in a Turkish prison?
One of my favourite parts is when the pilot invites the little boy, or the little boy comes to the cockpit, and the pilot invites him to check out the plane, and starts asking things like, "Have you ever seen a grown man naked?" or "Have you ever been in a Turkish prison?"
It's very strange.
And there's a whole bunch of running jokes all through it. But there's one in particular where the people at the control for the airport they're trying to land at. One of them is just stressed, and in 4 different scenes he goes from saying, "I picked the wrong day to stop smoking," to "I picked the wrong day to stop drinking," "I picked the wrong day to quit amphetamines," and then sniffing glue, and it's just...
If I remember correctly, at the end he is sniffing glue.
Yeah,
like he's just got that little pot there.
Well, he does all the things as he says he picked the wrong week to quit. And Blazing Saddles, which is another one of the same sort of style, but it's very Mel Brooks.
Very Jewish.
I enjoy Mel Brooks films, as weird as they get. But Blazing Saddles just has great joke after great joke.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about that a little later.
I mean, some of my favourite older ones, Good Morning Vietnam, Robin
Very
Williams.
good.
Quite good.
Mostly improv as well.
Yeah. But he did a lot of that. And I have no idea how old it is, but it seems to be filmed on an old camera, so I assume it's old. The Gods Must Be Crazy.
The Gods Must Be Crazy.
It is about an African tribesman who own they're particular people, and it's like a real group of people. The Bushmen, they talk in clicks and whistles, and they live out in the middle of nowhere. They're basically untouched by civilization. One day a plane flies over the top, overhead, and somebody throws a Coke bottle, an empty Coke bottle out. And, it's harder than rocks, and it can light fires, and they're like, damn, this is great. And, because, they all live this close-knit life, but there's only one of these Coke bottles. So eventually a fight breaks out, and this guy takes it upon himself to take this Coke bottle and return it to the gods, because they assume, having fallen from heaven, it's a gift from the gods. So he goes on this trek across Africa to throw it into a big waterfall, while at the same time, I think it's a journalist or something, is leaving South Africa and going kind of in the same direction, and there's like these terrorists who are doing this thing, and all these stories slowly get woven together, and like as it goes on, it just gets more and more outlandish, to the point where the Bushman is dressed as a schoolgirl fighting the terrorists with this tiny bow, which is like loaded with sleep poison or something. So he's like trying to put them to sleep, and it's quite funny. But yeah, basically they're trying to communicate with this guy, and there's a narrator, and it's like, he did not understand the strange words coming out of these people's mouths. He did not understand how they could be so pale while his people were so dark. Had they not been out in the sun for very long? And it's quite a funny film. Second one, not as funny, but pretty funny.
When you were describing the guy dressed as a schoolgirl and throwing it, it just sounds like Mel Brooks just really had an impact on the entire...
No, it's not like that. It's like their plan. They formulate a plan to sneak him in.
Oh, yeah, but like Mel Brooks really impacted the comedy industry in the 80s, and I don't think it's recovered yet. It's really like that very outlandish formulate a plan that really doesn't make sense and get a bit postmodern.
But like there's one scene in it where the terrorists are trying to shoot down a plane, and the rocket keeps falling out the back, so they're like stuffing banana leaves in there to try and it's a strange movie. 1980.
Okay.
But yeah, it's quite funny.
The same year as Airplane came out.
Yes.
Or Flying High.
Flying High, as you may know it.
But yeah, we can't really talk about comedy without touching on a couple of other genres that we might not usually watch. We might actually dedicate an entire podcast to these at one point. Maybe. But satire, we've already talked about Airplane, which is very
I wouldn't call it satire, it's more parody.
Yeah, well, you said it was a parody of a particular movie from...
Satire is more like RoboCop or Starship Troopers.
Yeah, well, parodies and satires, you know, as far as parodies go, you've got Spaceballs and Austin Powers, and then Monty Python is satire.
Yes.
And then there's the Jackass brand.
Yeah, what do you even call that? Like, people hurting themselves?
Look,
the genre?
I am, you know, I'm partial to a little bit of the old Jackass
I'm partial to
movies.
seeing Johnny Knoxville get smacked in the nads.
Yeah, but the real comedy part is Bad Grandpa, which I laughed my arse off at that.
It is a pretty funny movie.
I don't understand it, but
Oh, it's very strange.
Oh, I understand the movie, but I don't understand what makes it so funny.
I think it's because I don't know if they're actually real situations that they're in, or how much of them is staged, or
yeah. But apparently, everyone else in the scene doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah, and I think it's that idea that they're doing, like, because it started as back in the Jackass days as him just dressing up as the grandpa and having like enormous testicles hanging out his pants, like get him trapped in a door, or a dog would bite them or something. And
they
that's
played that to perfection with the first scene of Bad Grandpa, with him getting his balls trapped in a vending machine.
Yeah, it's quite funny, and that whole idea that the people around him are supposedly reacting in a real manner, I feel, is like what makes it funny. Like they put a rocking machine, you put the money in it and it bounces around or whatever. For kids, they put it through a shop front window. And everybody's just walking past like, what's going on here? And he's just like, I'm okay. But at the same time, it's not just a whole bunch of them. It's a movie about him taking his grandson to see his dad, and then they're in like the biker bar at the end, but they're the I don't know what they're called, but they're the bikers who protect children. That part was very funny.
Yeah, it's amazing that they've woven a plot into it that isn't actually awful. I don't really care about the plot, but it's not an awful one. Is there anything I haven't mentioned? Let us know your favourites in the YouTube comments or in email. We have an email address.
Do we?
I'm sure
we do have an email address.
Your email address.
No, we have an actual email address. My email address is on the site, I think, but I think I've changed that, unless you go looking in the URL.
I think it's something like the last reviewer at Gmail.
TLR at Gmail, I think it is.
Yeah, something like that. You'll find it if you really want us to know what your favourite comedy movie is.
I'm going to guess. Are you ready?
What?
The Dark Knight. Favourite comedy movie. Can't make a list of movies without that being on top. Can't be done. It's true. You know what my favourite comedy movie is? Blade Runner 2049. I'm kidding. I get more laughs mocking that movie than I did from the movie itself. But enough about that, because I'm starting to fall asleep.
Well, we could even talk about the comedy movie that wasn't originally supposed to be a comedy movie, The Room. But we have an entire podcast.
We have a podcast about that coming up for the release of The Disaster Artist.
I'm highly anticipating it, in case you couldn't guess.
I, for one, am not quite so highly anticipating it. But we'll find out soon enough. But now, it's time to take a old film and make it new again.
In the remakers.
This week, we're tackling Blazing Saddles. A film often criticised, at least these days, for its racial humour and bad taste. I imagine that's how it was received in the 80s as well.
Probably. It was a Mel Brooks film. So, for those of you who haven't seen it, you probably shouldn't listen to this, but it's a Western...
Spoiler alert for a 30-year-old movie.
Well, we're probably not gonna spoil it.
There's not a lot to spoil.
Since we're not really rewriting the plot either.
No.
We're really just casting it again. I haven't even chosen a director because I'm happy for anyone, even if Mel Brooks is still alive.
I think he is. I really hope I don't have to do Arms of an Angel again, but I think he is. Because if you're casting dead people.
But yes, it's a Western starring Gene Wilder, the amazing, and...
he's dead, just for clarification.
Yes, I know that.
So you can't cast him.
Oh. And not really anyone else that you know of today, people know of today. But they get a new sheriff who is black, and because it's set in the Old West, that's not really accepted. That's so
accepted.
the sheriff has to prove himself, and the town has to fight off these incoming slave drivers or something.
They're trying to build a railway.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like a typical Western plot. They're trying to build a railway through the town, and to do so, they have to chase the townspeople out. And so this new sheriff, and the whole idea is the villains put the sheriff in place. The idea being that the townspeople will chase him out, and then they'll just be able to come in and remove him with ease.
And Gene Wilder is playing a character called Jim.
The
who has,
Waco Kid.
The fastest hands in the West. So, there's regular points where he does something without his hands even moving. And I fondly remember that from my childhood.
Now, was that the chess piece the first time he does that?
Something
or
like
a coin or something, and his hands don't move, and he's like, open your hand, and there's nothing there, and it's like, oh, it's right here. That was really weird.
Yeah.
Because they don't even make an attempt to hide the fact that his hands didn't move.
Yeah.
Which is great, but at the same time, it's like, could have just done a motion blur or something.
Yeah, but I guess it's funnier that way. Anyway, so do you want to go first this time?
I believe it's your turn.
Okay, I can go first. I've actually planned it well this time. Woo! Hey, I have, every second week is a well-planned one.
Yeah.
Our next podcast, which we've already planned, is about time warps, and that's not well-planned. So you can be sure that the next one will be very well-planned.
Are you sure? Foreign films and martial arts?
Okay, maybe it won't be. So I've decided to cast 5 people and make a slight alteration.
You've cast 5 people?
Damn.
So
for Bart, who is the sheriff,
yep,
the hero, very charming and smart, Donald Glover, childish Gambino.
Yeah.
Because he's fantastic at comedy. I've seen him in Community and a few other minor roles. He also wrote a bunch of 30 Rock and Atlanta.
Yep.
And he's great at the smart, charming, quick-witted thing.
Yeah, he's quite funny.
And he's okay at racism.
He's okay at racism.
Okay with
you're not good at racism. You're just okay at it.
He's okay with racism.
You just go around going, you're a instead of going the whole way, so you're just okay.
But yes, Community was a very racially charged show for some reason. And so there were a lot of racist jokes directed towards him. And he seemed to really bathe in it. Anyway, that's a lot of talk for one character.
Yeah.
Jim, so Gene Wilder, and we would not approve of this film being remade anytime in the next 10 years because I like Gene Wilder too much. And he's just died. You can't remake his. But if I had to, I'm thinking either Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Even though he's a little bit typecast at the moment in one particular role.
Yeah.
But because
Spoiler alert, that one particular role isn't Iron Man, but I'll let you guys figure out what it is.
It is Iron Man.
God damn it, you ruined the game.
Just in case you got confused by Eamon. But yes, because Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man has to play someone who's a bit of an alcoholic.
Well, not anymore.
Yeah, but
he's gotten past his problems.
Played a bit of an alcoholic with a snarky attitude and a lot of skill.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the character of Jim.
Yeah.
Or Harrison Ford. Mostly for the attitude and also because he's done gunslinging stuff in the past and there's this...
but he's supposed to be exciting and interesting. He's not supposed to be like, I'm the Waco Kid.
I don't think
gruff.
so. In Jim's introduction in Blazing Saddles was sleeping in his cell.
But he's more mobile, he's more upbeat sometimes.
I don't think so. Plus, if Harrison Ford's going to do another indie movie, he can damn well move for Blazing Saddles.
Fair enough.
But anyway, I would hate to work with Harrison Ford.
Well, I would like to work with Harrison Ford, but as like a camera operator or something.
Oh yeah, for sure. Not a director.
Not a director.
Not a fellow actor even.
I mean, you could do a fellow actor. He only punched Ryan Gosling.
But
unintentionally, for the record. He didn't go out of his way to beat a fellow actor.
But yes, it doesn't matter who plays this. No, it doesn't matter which role this is. But I want Morgan Freeman to be one of the slaves, the one that he greets when he rides back to see the people as a sheriff,
Yep.
see his slave friends, and I want it to be Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
If for no other reason than to say, like at the end when the slaves are all free, for Donald Glover to say, "You're free now. You're a free man," and Morgan says, "Yes, I am."
In Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves,
Mm.
Morgan Freeman gets up and is giving a speech, and he says, "If you would be free men," that's like the start of it, and I'm 100% certain that that was unintentional.
Okay, but I want this to be intentional, and that's the entire point of him being in this for that joke. So they've also got a ludicrous bad guy in it who's just, it was Blazing Saddles was one of the first movies to do the bad guy laughing and then coughing joke that's been driven into the ground. But yeah, he's a ridiculous character, and I want either Robert De Niro, just for the lols, or Michael Douglas, because Michael Douglas does the rich prick thing wonderfully.
I could see Michael Douglas doing it.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro as well, but Robert De Niro is more... I think Robert De Niro just has more natural menace about him.
Yeah, and he was great in Dirty Grandpa. Not exactly a great film, but Robert was wonderful.
I don't think I've ever... Okay, he did play Frankenstein once, and that was pretty awful.
And my last piece of casting, there's one line in this film that is just so funny because it's so out of the blue. The sheriff walks out of his office, walks up to this old white lady and says, "Morning, ma'am, how you doing? This is a fine morning we having." And she says, "Up yours, nigger." And I want that woman to be Betty White.
Pretty sure it was Betty White I think it was Betty White, was in a movie about a giant crocodile, and she was feeding the giant crocodile cows and people.
Wow.
Yeah, I approve of that casting.
And my one last adjustment to this movie, in the actual movie, at one point late in the film, I don't know how it happens, but there's a big fight between the townspeople and the people who have come to take the town. And it moves out of the film set of Blazing Saddles and onto other film sets. And I think that it would be funny if they used that to comment on the similarities, or the visual similarities of the sets of Marvel and DC films.
Yeah.
So they roll onto multiple different, very similar looking sets, like in the old Monty Python jokes where something's repeated 12 times in a row. And they all stop fighting to comment on it at one point and say, "Weren't we
Haven't
just
we been here before?" I mean,
and
you could kind of do the same thing for the whole idea of there being loads of sequels as well.
Oh yeah, but then at the end of that entire sequence, they end up on a set with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and he tells everyone to stop fighting, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson," and they play him up as a Jesus character, like their own moral compass.
Their own moral compass.
Like maybe
The Rock.
Like maybe one of the people who came to drive the village people away asks him to sign their KKK hat or something like that. That's some symbol of white supremacy. Yeah. Which is funny because he's a brown man.
Brown.
I don't know where he's from, but he's brown.
Islands.
Good.
Polynesia. I don't know.
Anyway, I think it would be hilarious if someone asked him to sign a KKK hat.
That would be quite funny.
Your turn.
My turn. So I decided for the director, I wanted to go with someone who wouldn't be afraid to do the racism. And there's really only one person that does that, and that's Quentin Tarantino. You just have to watch Django Unchained or The Hateful Eight. He just doesn't care these days.
Django Unchained is like a serious version of Blazing Saddles.
It's a really I wouldn't call that a serious movie.
Yeah, but it's still tackling the racism with
with outlandish violence and that costume.
That one main character who's actually really cool. Well,
Which main character?
Django.
Oh. I was thinking you were talking about Christoph Waltz, and I was like,
he's not the main character.
yeah,
man.
he is. You said that. We said that one main character. So I was thinking, both of them, they're both really cool. Which one could he be talking about?
But anyway,
the one that uses slavery for his own personal gain, or the one that is a slave being used to further somebody else's personal gain?
yeah, these are both very cool characters.
They are. But yes, it's directed by Quentin Tarantino, just because I like him. Now, for clarification, before I cast this film, I did not know the casting of the new Pacific Rim. So this is 100% not influenced by that travesty of a film. John Boyega as Bart, because I figure we need somebody who's in the public eye, but also having done films like Attack the Block, he's clearly not afraid to tackle stereotypes head on.
Yeah, that was a comedy role, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was all about like gangs and, you know, him being a gangster and stuff. So I feel like if you can do that, you can be mocked as a slave. And Scott Eastwood, who is of course Clint Eastwood's son, as the Waco Kid, more for that Clint Eastwood idea of him being a small Clint Eastwood, rather than anything else.
Clint Eastwood could do the role.
He could, but it would be like him in a walker.
Yeah.
So him having not moving his hands for things would be necessary.
Well, they could animate him like Spy Kids 3.
Let's. No. Now, as the villain, as you said, he's very outlandish. He's very over the top. And I do like your casting choices. I personally think they're better than mine. But I was thinking Mark Strong.
Oh.
Who kind of made his name playing villains.
Yeah.
So I feel like he generally plays more serious ones, but this villain is kind of supposed to be serious. Like, he plays it serious. It's his actions that are funny. So I feel like he could pull that off. And as a character...
Sorry, I was just going to say that Kick-Ass proves that he can do comedy.
Yes. But at the same time, being a serious villain.
Yeah.
And then there's a character in the film who's enormous called Mongo. Who I have cast as The Rock, because I just think The Rock coming in and smashing things, just breaking things everywhere would be quite funny.
That would be wonderful, but my counter proposal, Vin.
See, for Vin Diesel, he would come in and he would smash things while going, family!
Now, I think that he would be up for that, and I think that would be wonderful.
But no, I like Vin Diesel sometimes, and sometimes he's in Fast and Furious.
Yeah, well, he's done Groot and Iron Giant, so he could be doing all right.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't
gargantuan.
say anything, so perfectly cast. But no, back in the days, he did the Riddick films, which I quite enjoy, as well as the new one. I think he's just kind of, you know, after 8 Fast and Furious films, it's time to let go. It's time to move on. The only other person who stuck around in a franchise that long is Arnold in Terminator and Sylvester Stallone in Rocky.
And we know how those things are turning out.
Exactly. Yeah, as far as the plot or anything, I think it followed the same story, but I myself personally am not a fan of doing all the gags one after the other with a thin plot, so I'm thinking something more that's story focused with the jokes written in. I feel like Tarantino could do that quite well, as he's shown before with films like Django. But also super violent, because, you know, it's Tarantino. We need that super violence. I mean, one of the funniest scenes from Django is a KKK scene, so I feel like he could nail it. And, you know, you'd have your cameos by, like, Sam Jackson and Tim Roth, Uma Thurman, whatever. They're kind of like his staples. So yeah, I think he could pull it off.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I like that casting. I feel like I probably should have cast someone for Mongo now.
Well, he's got a very small role in the film.
Yeah, but he was probably one of the best characters in there. I cast all my favourite characters besides the bad guy. I'm not a fan of the bad guy.
You did cast the bad guy.
Yeah, I know. I'm not a fan of the bad guy, but I cast him. And yes, I like the old woman who says, "Up yours, nigger."
That's fair enough. But like, I feel like no director today could do that. But Tarantino comes in, he casts as like Uma Thurman as her. Beautiful.
Yeah, that would be good.
Anyway, remake is wrapped up, kind of like this podcast.
Yeah, we've got Time Warp coming up. We're literally about to record it.
Two birds, one stone.
Yeah.
Several hours.
So stay tuned for that very soon. Probably at the same time, even.
They will likely both be up within a couple of days of each other.
And for the gamers out there, we also just went to EP Expo on the Gold Coast.
Yes, we did indeed.
And we'll be doing a podcast about that as well over on Game Shark Reviews.
Yes.
So it should be interesting. It's just the three of us who have been in this podcast before. Nick was a guest star once. So it should be very light-hearted. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah.
Tune in next week for Tarantino's reboot of all of Adam Sandler's films.